The Portland Trail Blazers' struggles are more than just a passing phase. They reveal a deeper challenge that has shaped the franchise for decades. While the Blazers boast a rich and proud NBA history, much of their most celebrated success occurred before the 2000s. Over the past 20 years, however, Portland has consistently found itself grappling with underperformance and unmet expectations. Professional sports are incredibly complex, and no single factor can fully explain why a team succeeds or fails. But if we look closely at Portland's situation, we can identify a kind of fog machine, a combination of circumstances that cloud their path to sustained success. First, Portland is a smaller market team located in the Pacific Northwest, far from the glitz and glamour of cities like Miami or Los Angeles. The city itself, while charming, doesn't offer the same allure to free agents as those bigger markets. Add to that Oregon's relatively high state income tax, and you have a recipe that makes it tough to attract top-tier talent purely through financial incentives or lifestyle appeal. The Blazers can certainly draw players when they're winning and competitive, but without a compelling reason, whether it's championship contention or lucrative contracts, they often find themselves more in line with teams like the Utah Jazz rather than the New York Knicks when it comes to free agent interest. Of course, Portland can engage in trades like any other NBA franchise, but trade opportunities depend heavily on having valuable assets to begin with, which circles us back to the most critical path for improvement, the NBA draft. Drafting is inherently unpredictable. No team nails it every time. But for a franchise like Portland, which can't rely on free agency to build a contender, excelling in the draft isn't just important, it's essential. It's not enough to be average or just good enough. To close the gap with elite teams, Portland must consistently draft players who outperform their peers. Think of it like competing in the Olympics. You can't just be faster than the average person. You have to be significantly faster than the world's best athletes to have a shot at a medal. Similarly, Portland can't settle for average draft results if they want to compete at the highest level. How have the Blazers fared in the draft over the years? To answer this, I created a comprehensive visual summary covering Portland's draft history over the last 40 years, starting in 1984. Why 1984? Because that year is infamous for the Blazers' decision to draft Sam Bowie instead of Michael Jordan, a choice that has become a cautionary tale in NBA lore. To be fair, the year before, Portland made one of their best picks ever by selecting Clyde Drexler, 13th overall. But beginning the analysis in 1984 allows us to acknowledge that infamous moment up front and then focus on the broader trends without getting stuck in ancient history. Here's how I categorized each draft pick: stars, starters, significant role players, minor role players, busts. For each draft, I looked at where Portland picked, and in cases where they traded down, considered the potential players they could have selected. I then compared the players they chose to the best available options that year. Based on this, I assigned a color code to each draft. Green, the Blazers picked the best available player, or someone comparable who became a starter or star. White, they selected the best available player, but that player was of minor importance, role player or bust, or there simply weren't strong players available at their draft position. Yellow, they chose a player noticeably worse than the best available, like a bust when a significant role player was available, or a role player when starters were on the board. This likely didn't change the franchise's trajectory, but was a sub-optimal choice. Red, they missed out on a star who could have significantly impacted the franchise without acquiring a comparable player instead. There were two special considerations. If Portland didn't have a pick in a given year, that year was marked white, assuming there was a strategic reason behind the absence. The only exception was 2014, when they could have drafted Nikola Jokic for a modest second-round pick, a missed opportunity too significant to ignore. If the Blazers passed on a generational superstar, players who won multiple MVPs or championships, that year was automatically marked red, regardless of other picks. For example, in 2001, Portland missed out on Tony Parker, who was drafted 28th overall. but they selected Zach Randolph at 19th. Randolph became a solid player and borderline all-star, so that year was green. Contrast that with 2018, when Portland picked Anthony Simons while Jalen Brunson was still available. Both are good players, but Brunson's impact has been notably greater, so that year was yellow. While this evaluation involves some subjectivity, the key is understanding that the color coding reflects not just the quality of the player chosen, but how that choice compares to other available talent at the time. Some drafts with mediocre players were white because those were the best options available, while some drafts with good players were yellow because better choices were overlooked. Ideally, you want to see as many green years as possible, or at least white ones, indicating no harm done. Looking at the chart, here are some initial takeaways. Over 40 years, the Blazers had 7 green drafts and 8 white drafts, meaning about 37.5% of the time they either made strong picks or didn't hurt themselves. That's not terrible. The green drafts often carry significant weight. A single excellent draft can offset several subpar ones. For instance, the 2006 draft brought Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge, and 2012 gave them Damian Lillard, both pivotal moments for the franchise. However, the Blazers have also had 15 red drafts and 10 yellow ones. More concerning is that 5 of their green drafts occurred before 2001, well before the modern NBA era. Since drafting Lillard, they haven't landed an optimal pick. Overall, Portland's draft history is roughly on par with many NBA teams navigating the unpredictable draft landscape. But here's the catch. The Blazers can't afford to be average. They need to be exceptional in the draft to stay competitive. Being just good enough won't cut it when competing against teams that consistently find star talent. In short, Portland's draft performance is a major factor behind their ongoing struggles. Until the Blazers become more astute and aggressive in identifying and developing talent, they'll have to pin their hopes on landing a once-in-a-generation superstar, someone like Victor Wembanyama or Cooper Flagg. Without that kind of breakthrough, Portland risks remaining trapped in a limited talent pipeline, which is far from encouraging news for the franchise and its passionate fan base. What do you think? Is the draft really the key to Portland's future, or are there other factors at play? Could the Blazers turn things around with smarter trades or free agent signings? Share your thoughts and let's get the conversation going.